Here's a quick video tour of the Spelfabet Level 8 workbook. This is version 2, 2017. It's quite different from the earlier version. This one focuses on suffixes. Here we've got the parent aid edition, but the clinician teacher one is exactly the same, except you can make more copies. So it's a PDF download you get from my website, which is spelfabet.com.au. Here is the index. As you can see, it's a very long workbook, so I'm going to go quite fast and just show you what's in it. And you can pause if I'm going too fast. That's a great thing about YouTube. So here we have the words bone, ice, lays, slime, which we've already practiced in earlier workbooks. And now we're going to add the letter Y, which is a suffix. And I'll just tilt that up a bit so it's a little bit easier to see. So we take off the E, as in shake, shaky, and we put on a Y. And that Y turns these into adjectives. That's the function of it. It changes the function of the word or the type of word. Here, chat, chatty, we have to double the T before we can put a Y on. And mud, muddy, scrap, scrappy, and skin, skinny. And then for this one, bowl, bowler, is an agent noun suffix here. So it's changing a verb, bowl, into the person who does the action, the bowler. And farm into farmer and hunt into hunter. You can also do that with objects. So the bird feeder is the thing that feeds the birds. The feather duster is the thing that does the dusting with an ER. And here, if you want to make clipper, digger, runner, shutter, flipper, you have to double the P or double the final sound before you add the ER, because otherwise it would be shreeder or skeiner. And we've practiced that already in the previous workbooks. Brag, I suppose it's brag-art really, isn't it? Anyway, hit, log, it's a bit hard to find enough words with good pictures that can illustrate a point. So these people are doing the action, but you have to double the D or double the final sound before you can add the ER, otherwise that would be droomer and huger. Actor, doctor, miners, sculptor. So OR here, actor, and sailor, for example, that OR, you could take it off and have the word sail as a separate thing and treat this as a suffix, but it's not really a productive suffix in English. You can't make up a new action and put OR on it in the way you can with ER. So yeah, that OR, it sounds the same as if it was spelt ER, but we say act or when we're spelling it. Doctor, minors, sculptor. There's a less common way of spelling that. And then aggressive. So this "iv" is again changing the function of the nouns, of the verbs. So the verbs are here, and we add this "iv" to make it into an adjective. Aggressive and productive order. Bouncing, dancing, juicing, piercing. So here, words with an E, we take it off before we add the ing. It's a vowel suffix. ES plurals, so typically we add an S to the end of words to make them into plural, but if you get the word ash and add just an S, ash, and doesn't really work, brush, bus, how do you do it? Add an S to an S and hear them both. So we put ES, so bus is, we have to add a syllable to break up those two sounds, bus and the plural S, brushes. So these are all friction sounds at the end of a word. That's why we have an ES plural on them. Bongo, gecko, hero, we put ES as well. An unusual spelling. Tomato, potato have ES, not just S. But a lot of words that end in O, like hippo and logo and piano, we just put S. And you just have to know which is which. So here's the ones that are more inclined to have ES. These ones do not. Just a sample, and then, once kids know what the patterns are and what to look for, they can gather data as they're reading about which one's going which container. But they need to set the containers up first so that they can do that data gathering when they're reading. Calf, calves. So we're changing F to V, and we only do it when we actually hear it change. F to V, so leaf, leaves. But if we have cliff and then we don't say cliffs, we say cliffs. So we keep the F, so we don't change it to a V. Anyway, that's a double F, so you'd be less inclined to. But oafs, we don't say oafs, we just say oafs, and we keep the F and we don't change it to V. But here these ones do change to V. Baby to babies. Now, whether you're calling that or changing Y to I and adding ES, or whether you're saying you're changing Y to IE and adding S, that's a technical point, up to you. Footy becomes footies, berry becomes berries. We don't like to have IE, we don't like to have Y and then ES, or we don't like to have a YS at the end of words. We have IES. However, if we have cowboy, that's OY there is a grapheme. It's not a Y by itself. And holiday, that AY is a grapheme, it's not a Y by itself. So when we make them plural, holidays, we don't change the Y to I. It's only when the Y is acting on its own to represent a sound that you change it into an I. Brushes, so these ones again, this time it's verbs, so she brushes, he, she or it verbs, she tosses, what is it? I've forgotten, misses. She misses the bin, squeezes, and these ones. So again, there's a friction sound at the end of the word, and you can't really say stretch, so you have to say stretch and then put a vowel in, and then the z. And when we're spelling it, we say stretch es. You have to remember it's an E. The vowel is spelt with an E, even though it's an unstressed vowel. Bright, so this is a comparative so not an agent noun we had before. This time the function of the is to do comparing two things, sharper knife and swimming in the deeper pool. And sometimes we have to double the final consonant before we add an ER, as in big otherwise it would be by or fater. So we want glad we have to double the final consonant, which we've already done in previous workbooks. And then dry, drier, grumpy, grumpier, again changing the Y to I before you add your ER. Brave and braver, well you could say you were taking the E off and then putting ER on, but I decided to just go with add an I, you've already got an E. And big est, funny est, so here you have to remember to change the Y to I and to take off the E here in large. So change funnier. When you're making funny est, you change the Y to an I before you add the est. And when you're doing yummiest, the same thing. And late est, you don't need both those E's, so you drop one. Boastful. This full is like the word full, except with only one L. Cheerful is full of cheer. Fearful is full of fear. It's not full spelt with a double L like normally when it's by itself. Cantered, here, some kids aren't aware that the word canter is used as part of the word cantered, and that you spell ed with E-R-E-D, but because it's an ER verb ending in ER, the spelling is E-R-E-D, cantered. And blistered and pampered and skewered. Blockage, this is an idge spell, and we say idge in our normal speech, but when we say blockage, when we're spelling it, we say block age. Carry age, a carriage is a thing that's designed to carry people, and we change the Y to an I before we add the AGE. And the same for marriage, yeah. So it's the same sort of pattern. Postage, stoppage, we have to put a double P, otherwise it would be stopage. So applying the rules that were learnt earlier, the patterns that were learnt earlier, drop your E's, double your final consonant, change your Y to I. When adding other suffixes, these ones, there isn't really a word cab to add the suffix age to in cabbage, but it looks the same. It's the same sort of format, vintage, village, message. These words, Atom, City, Dragon, because this is an A, you'd think there'd be a double G there, but there's not. English. Some words are weird. Wizard, we really should have double Z there, but we don't. I'm sorry about that. It's not my fault. Dangerous. We say dangerous, but when we're spelling it, we say dangerous. Glory, change the Y to I. Ouse. So this ouse changes the function of the word, makes it into an adjective. Amorous, deciduous, so again there's more words like that, but they're not ones that you can readily build from parts that can exist on their own, from free morphemes. So there's no such thing as enorm in English. Maybe enorm was a thing in one of the Greek languages of English, original languages, but not anymore, so we just have enormous now. It's one meaning in English, but you can still see it's got this suffix form at the end. Ancient, delicious, gracious. So here, this sh sound, C-I, is a very common spelling of sh, and it's to do with having a suffix at the end. And again, often the base word is no longer a word in English. But here, the base word is a word in English, clinic, and we make it into clinician. Electric, and we make it into electrician. So this letter C combines with the I to represent the sh sound, and so what we're getting is the best of both words. We're representing every sound with a spelling, and we're keeping the electric in electrician, and we're keeping the music in musician. We don't want to write SH there because we lose the word music as a visible thing inside the word musician. So art as in, so sometimes people, these kind of people words have shin, and sometimes we use ist to mean the person who does something. So cyclist, novelist, pharmacist, and again the things about dropping e's and changing right to I, those kind of things still apply. Adoption, so here we've got sh with a ti, congestion, because the base word, like direct, we say T when we're just saying direct, but when we make it into direction, the final sound becomes a sh. The final sound of that base word becomes a sh with that, and it makes it possible to keep the word direct inside the word direction. Calculate, calculation, communicate, communication. So you can start to see that long words that look very overwhelming for learners who are struggling, actually they're just made of bits, and if you know what all the bits are, it's not so difficult, and you just work your way through one syllable at a time. Investigate, investigation, medicate, medication, recreate, recreation, authorize, authorization, so prepare, preparation, so here we're doing ation, taking the E off and adding the ation. Apply, application, so here we've got an extra cation. It's just the way that the word is the way that the word is built, and you notice that there are even, so here humid is a base word, and then we've got humidify, and then we make it into humidification. So as we go through this book, we're gradually learning how to add more and more bits to words to change their meaning and their function. Aggress, aggression, depress, depression. So here the sh is spelt with double S-I, because we don't want to lose the aggress in aggression, or the depress in depression, or the process in procession. So it's a clever way of maintaining the principle that we have a spelling for each sound, but not losing the spelling of the base word, even though the pronunciation changes when you make the word longer. And here, apprehension, conclusion, these ones tend to have a D, or these ones have a D at the end, and they tend to change to an S. So persuade becomes persuasion with this jen. Explode, explosion. Awfully, these ones, when you add li, the adverbial suffix, to awful, you keep both the L from the awful and the L and the li. So a lot of learners need to learn it. You know, you have a double L there because there's an L for local, and then there's one for li. Don't just go down to one L. Accessible, we take a bit of the word off the end of these base words sometimes before we add our ible suffix, and we pronounce these accessible and digestible and reversible, and then we have able, adorable and breakable and comfortable. It's comfortable, that's the way English language learners pronounce it. We just say comfortable, but comfortable. There's 4 syllables when you're saying it in your spelling voice. Achievements, so here this meant or ments, we just say ment when we're talking, we say meant when we're spelling achievements. And again, you've got to take the E's off if there's any E's before you add that. No, you don't take the E's off because it's not a vowel suffix, my apologies. Enforcement, and the suffixes that begin with a vowel, you take the E off. Bluntness, greatness, so this ness is a suffix, I think an old English one, a sort of Germanic one rather than Latin. Careless, restless, weightless, wireless, and adulthood. So you can take, these are still productive suffixes in English. You could take the word hood and put it on a new word and make it another word and make it into a new word. Colonial, colony, change the Y to I, add al. Natural, take the E off before you put the vowel suffix on. Sensational, you can just put it straight on. So making nouns into adjectives with this al, so that's an adjectival suffix. Blacken, freshen, so to make something fresh, to make something black, to make something tight, to make something tough. Boyish, So here, if there's an E at the end, you take it off before you add the vowel suffix. Turkish, stylish, sheepish. Abundance, abundant becomes abundance. Extravagant, the T becomes a C. Vigilance with a C, so we pronounce a sound but we write it with the letter C. Confidence, the same thing again. Persistence, residence. Autism, so when we add this ism to make a noun. Baptism, criticism. We sometimes need to drop a bit from the end of the base word. We don't have a word passive, although that passive means peace, really, originally from Latin. I don't know if it's from Latin. Someone will be able to tell you that. Look it up, you know. Absentee. This E is the person, so the absentee is the person who's absent. The awardee is the person who gets the award. The trainee is the person who's getting the training. Employee, referee, examinee. So that's a meaningful thing. Even though it can't exist on its own in English, you stick it on words. Now, when we say academy and then we make it into academic, we change the stress. And that happens a lot with compounding, with adding suffixes. The stress in the word shifts, but the spelling is often retained. So academic, and we just change that. They take away that Y, and then automatic and romantic. Romantic, I'd have to add a T. And automatically, so now we're making it longer again, economically. So when you're spelling it, you say it a funny way in your spelling voice. Even though you say economically, when you're spelling it, economically, you add to remember that A, you add it in as an extra syllable in your spelling voice. Blossomed, preferred, regretted. So sometimes you have to think about word stress when you're deciding whether to double. So blossom, dog, sled, pilot. So for example, pilot has the stress on the first syllable, not the second. So when you add ed, you don't need to double the T. If it was piloted, you would have to double the T. Refer, that's got stress on the second syllable, so you do double the R before you add ed. And summon, well, we don't have the stress on the second syllable, it's on the first, summon, and so we just add on an ed. So thinking about stress before as a part of thinking about whether to double or not. Babysitting, you do have to stress, you do have to double because that's stressed. Credit, edit, the stress is on the first syllable, so you don't have to double. Contemporary, primary, so people say primary, but it's primary, necessary, revolutionary, secondary, and so these are all adjectives. So it's an adjectival ending with ARY. And we're changing these ones, making again into adjectives, so changing clamour into clamorous. And clamour typically in British English ends with OUR, but when you make it longer, you take the U out. And laborious, it's labour if you're writing it in British English with OUR, and then you change it back to OR when you're spelling it. Apologise, typically in British English is spelt with an SE, appetizer, and authorise, this ISE, but in American English it's written with a Z, organised, and realised, you can write it with a Z. I've just done the British English version. You feel free to Tipex it and do the American English one if you'd rather teach American English. Acknowledgement, again, they have this British-American divide where in acknowledgement, British English you have an E, but you're more likely to leave the E off. Of these kind of words like likeable, you're more likely to have an E on it if it's British English, but take it off. Oh, likeable, yeah, in American English you take the E off. So Australian learners know both because we have both sorts of books and we have both kinds, and so it's a bit confusing, but as long as you know there's two possible ways and you can choose which one you want to do. And doubling before suffixes. So again, in US English, you're less likely to double the final L. So appalling, for example, I would double the L because I tend to use British English, but in American English, you're less likely to do that. And then the E diminutive, i.e. Aussie, Bicky, Bikey, Bookie, Cozzy, Girly, don't call me girly. And so this is a diminutive, so to diminish and make smaller, or, you know, treat like a cutie pie, which can be a bit annoying. Budgie, I'm sure the budgies don't really mind being called budgies, and they don't all insist on being called budgerigar. So that's got a meaning as well, and it means it's a diminutive. Okay, so that's suffixes. That's a lap through suffixes, which I found to be really interesting and helpful to older kids who are quite stuck on those longer words. And the next level up from this is then looking more in detail at Latin and Greek parts of words in our language that are retained. And yeah, I hope you find it useful.